Well, good morning. We're just about to say goodbye to April. While things improved later in the month, I would say good riddance, considering our April showers showed up as major snowstorms earlier this month. This morning, we have a conversation with Marquette City Manager. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Mike Angeli was appointed Marquette City Manager in October of 2015. He's a longtime employee of the city of Marquette, starting as a police officer in 1976. Prior to his appointment as city manager, he was Marquette's chief of police. He also had served as interim city manager. Mike's a graduate of Marquette Senior High School and Northern Michigan University, where he earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in criminal justice and a minor in business management. Also a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Mike, welcome back to the Ryan Report.
Good morning, and thank you.
You know, just reading through that, you've managed to do it all here.
Yes.
And we talked before that your family's roots actually go back to Iron River, and they were here for a long time.
Yes, that's true.
And then you graduated from Marquette High School, went to Northern, started as a police officer, and you've worked your way up. That doesn't happen very often.
No, I don't think it does, and I never expected to be city manager someday. Police chief, now maybe I would have looked forward to that or aspired to that, but I think it all started for me with the city when I became a young police officer, and from that point on I never had any intention or desire to leave the community.
And you spent a lot of time as a detective and
Yes.
rose through the ranks that way.
Yes.
And you didn't actually seek the city manager's job, I know that.
No, I didn't.
Now you have a new title too. You're the king of the roundabouts.
Yes, I think I proclaimed myself last year.
And for me that was good because you set up one of my most popular closing thoughts, the story of the man from Trinary. But, seriously, what has the experience been now that we have 7 roundabouts in the city of Marquette?
Well, first, let me tell you, I thought the man from Trinary was wonderful.
Okay.
I know I've joked with you about it before, right. But I think your conclusion, your closing poem was timely and necessary, and it certainly made it a well-rounded
It was
poem.
fun. It was one of those inspirations.
Yeah, no, it was very nice. Well, the roundabouts are working out well for us. We have a few more things to do yet this spring because of the weather last year, and it set us back a considerable amount of time. And we've got to go back, especially the ones on the highway, and do some landscaping, some painting of the road, markings and things of that nature. We put temporary paint down last year just to get people through that early phase, and we'll have the construction people back again soon here to finish up. But overall, they've been great, and I think the acceptance by the community has been good.
And one of the main ideas behind the roundabouts is they're safer in the sense that, you don't have these T-bone accidents. You may have some fender benders, but people should be going about 15, 20 miles an hour at that point.
They're a lot safer. They take a little bit more to get used to. They tend to flow traffic more than stop and go traffic. And it takes a little bit of getting used to for drivers to understand that they're a flowing
Right.
type of mechanism. But I think overall everybody's been doing a very good job.
And if they would all just remember that the car in the roundabout has the right of way.
That's correct.
And if there's nobody there, you have the
You
right of way.
have the right of way.
Okay.
Yep, you have to think a little bit.
I know traffic has been an issue in the city of Marquette. You've had some studies.
Mm-hmm.
You've made some changes. Are more changes likely to occur?
Well, yes, as you mentioned, we had a study done about 3 years ago, and it identified many areas, and especially intersections where we needed to make some changes. As you noted, we've taken down some flashing lights, we've taken down some stop signs, we've taken down some stop and go signals with some more to come, but probably the most significant thing to happen starting now is that we're going to be replacing every one of our stop lights, our stop and go lights. They are going to be upgraded to the latest technology. They are going to have sensors in the pavement at many of them to allow them to adjust to the traffic, and they're going to talk to each other so that they can time themselves equally or better with to allow for better flow.
That sounds like a big upgrade. The many of the people who don't live in Marquette do spend time in Marquette. Marquette attracts a lot of people with festivals and events and conferences. And those come at some cost to the city in some case, don't they?
Yes.
And but yet you're continuing to support that idea?
Yes, we want to continue to support anything that encourages, the economic effects in the city. We do our best to assist with funding if we can, to offer in lieu of services in the form of manpower that could help out with these events. But I have to tell you, it gets tougher and tougher every year because of the cost primarily.
And they really don't, in a sense, generate tax revenue for the city.
No.
Or other revenue.
Yeah, the effect is not direct for us. It's very indirect, if anything at all. We love the opportunities and the benefit it creates to the businesses in the community, to the organizations, but it has absolutely none or very little financial benefit to the city government itself.
Okay. We'll have some more questions for you in just a couple of minutes. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Our guest this morning is Marquette City Manager Mike Angeli. One of the big things obviously happening in Marquette is the new hospital. It appears that construction is going well.
Yes, from our perspective, it's going very well. As a matter of fact, I plan on a tour with some commissioners this week of the current construction.
Okay.
We have bi-weekly meetings with the construction part of the hospital project, and everything's moving ahead very well, and I think on schedule.
There were a lot of road projects, including several of those roundabouts that were part of it, and you've pretty much completed that work?
Yep, it's like I said, all of our work is done except for maybe some landscaping and things of that nature.
And of course the big question everybody has, and I imagine you don't have an answer, but what is going to happen to the old hospital? And at least are there things being considered in that area?
Yes, I think it was recently on the news or out in the media that the hospital put out RFPs, which are requests for proposals. They've received 2, at least that I'm aware of. I managed to see one of those personally, and I think it's very impressive from a person who would like to buy the whole property and convert it into another use, which I think will be beneficial to the community.
And the hospital's really had a positive, or the new hospital, a positive effect on the downtown because of its proximity to that
Yes,
area, isn't it?
I don't think the downtown people yet have fully realized or will realize until that hospital opens the impact it's going to have just on the foot traffic and vehicle traffic alone.
You're heading into your construction season, which is big. You decided, you and the commission, to put off the College Avenue portion because of what uncertainty about the future.
Yeah.
So you're going to use those funds in some other directions?
Yeah, we had about $1.5 million set aside for some road repair and construction on College Avenue between Presque Isle and 7th. It's in bad shape and does need to be repaired. However, with the future of that old hospital site still up in the air, it didn't make sense for me to spend that kind of money at this time. Certainly in the future, yes. So I've asked the commission, and they approved to move that money over to the Lighthouse Park and to Shiras Park, which is Picnic Rocks, to kind of help us get those parks, Shiras back functioning, and the Lighthouse one as a new park, functioning.
That Shiras really suffered a lot of damage in the parking lot area, didn't it?
Yeah, we had quite a bit last October during that storm. Our intent for this summer is to get it back in working order, actually make it a little bit smaller parking lot, allow public access, and long term we have to come up with a solution for securing the shoreline and putting in revetments and things to prevent future damage.
And the whole Lakeshore Avenue, Lakeshore Street, Boulevard, I guess. Boulevard.
Yes.
Is there still some thought about the possibility of relocating that?
Oh, yeah, we're still working on that. We recently applied for an Army Corps of Engineer grant to try to help us fund that road project. that's in a similar situation as Charvers Park, in that it just keeps getting pounded by the waves and the weather, and we have to do something there that's also expensive to try to stabilize that shoreline.
One of your big challenges coming up, I know, is the likely closing of the Presque Isle power plant. That they are a major taxpayer in the city of Marquette. What does that represent for the city?
Well, it represents a considerable amount of our tax revenue, our general fund income. As recently as 4 or 5 years ago, they were paying to the city about $1.6 million in taxes. Countywide, they were closer to $5 million. By our estimation, after they close, which will probably be about a year from now or beginning a year from now, worst case scenario, we might be looking at about $100,000 in tax revenue. Best case scenario, maybe about $500,000. Either way, considerably less than we're getting now.
And what are you and the commission doing to try to replace that revenue?
Well, what I'm looking at is a couple of different things. One is that I think it's important that the city sell some of our bigger land tracts, and then encourage them for development that would then act as a new tax base. I'm talking primarily about Cliffsdale property. We have some property in the Heartwood Forest that's been identified as developable, and we have still one parcel left in Founder's Landing that we can sell under the same thoughts.
And I can recall from the past that the Heartwood property, you're talking about some areas that were really kind of designated for residential development, not without major impact on the trail systems.
That's correct. I would guess 95% of it was identified as recreational, which it will stay, but there was a small section near the intersection of Division Street and McClellan that was identified as developable, which means that it was open for sale, in my opinion, and then development along the lines of something like a subdivision or housing or something like that.
Okay. We have to take a break. We'll pick it up where we leave off there. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. And again, this morning we're talking with Marquette City Manager Mike Angeli. Before we leave that one point you made, the Cliffsdale project, has that now reached a point where it can be developed for other uses?
Well, it can be developed now. We are at a point where we're almost to the point where the DEQ will release us from any environmental liability. We've been working diligently over the last 6 or 8 years to try to get that property as clean as we can. So yes, we're right on the cusp of it being where it needs to be for sale.
Generally speaking, are the city's finances in good shape?
Yes, I mean we're doing okay. Our general fund revenue has not been increasing much, if at all. We try to compensate by other means, but at the same time, we're providing more services too. I mean, we've got more parks, we've got more streets to plow, we've got different things that we need to do, so the expenses are going up as well.
Did this crazy winter we had have any major impacts on the city?
We did okay with the winter. I think it set us back a little bit in for example, our curbside brush pickup and leaf pickup and things like that. I mean, those are going to be pushed back, but our crews really responded well, especially our plowing crews, and have done a very good job.
I want to ask you about a question that's partly in the city's realm, but goes well beyond that. And it's a concern many people have with what's happened now in recent years with school safety. And I know you've been a longtime champion of having a police officer in the schools. That program has been very successful, hasn't it?
Yes, we've had a school liaison program for over 40 years within the city, maybe even longer. And most recently, we've been talking internally with the idea of potentially providing another officer in the schools. We have one now, and maybe providing one more. Of Of course, that again depends on our ability to finance that position. You know, we are actively discussing with the school the possibility of the Marquette area public schools, and you know, we do have some interested private donors as well that would like to be considered.
And this isn't just a matter of having an armed officer in the school, is it? It's the contacts those officers can make?
It's the contacts and it's the interaction. It's the providing for the students the concept that police officers are not necessarily your enemy. They're not evil. They're there to help. They're human beings. They have families. They do everything else like they do, and actually developing a relationship or rapport with students.
As you look at this issue, and obviously it's being debated in Lansing right now, are there things that you see that we need to do to keep our schools safe?
Well, I think there are, but I think under the same light, the school district here has been working quite a bit over the last few years to address those issues. Building security, for example. I had the privilege to sit on a committee within the district over the last few years that identified some of the structural issues, not just safety, but you know, environmental and things of that nature. And they've gone to great lengths to try to improve the physical safety of the buildings.
Do we need new legislation in Lansing, do you think? Or maybe some money is what we need?
Money is what we need. I mean, legislation is always welcome, but often it's something that's difficult to fund.
One of the projects, and you mentioned it a moment ago, but that is the new park associated with the lighthouse. That sounds like is that still in the planning stage?
Well, the commission has approved a plan for the park, which includes several things, but probably most significantly is we want to try to take advantage of the buildings there and the location. We want to try to do something in the form of short-term rentals, for example, of the captain's house, maybe convert the station house into a venue for the public if they want to rent or have meetings, or kind of like the pavilion is now, kind of a thing like that. With the idea of generating some revenue for the city that can then go back into that park to keep it sustainable.
And obviously working with the museum there,
yeah, the Maritime Museum has been a very good partners. Right now we have a relationship with them where they have exclusive tours of the lighthouse, which is good for us because then we don't have to, you know, manage that ourselves, and they've been doing a very good job.
And this is a fun place for anyone to visit, actually.
Yes. Or
it will become. We have less than a minute. Have you figured out what to do with recycled glass yet?
Well, we have prepared options. The best option is probably, none of the options are good because glass is just
nobody wants it. Huh?
Nobody wants it. It is very recyclable, but nobody wants it. That and the fact that we're so far away from those that do want it. We're going to offer the commission some options here at the end of May. We have another work session scheduled. The best option, in my opinion, is to leave things the way they are. There is some current legislation in the state legislature that helps deal with recycling, especially in the form of grants and financing to help us develop recyclable programs. So, you know, we're going to have the option of letting things go until then.
We'll have to leave it right there.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll be back with some other thoughts for you after we take this break. Well, I'm probably going to regret telling this story because I'm going to come off sounding like the 98-pound weakling or worse. But let me tell you about my experience on a recent morning with a bar of soap. I was all set to step into the shower to start my day when I realized it was just about time for a new bar of soap. I grabbed one from the cabinet and attempted to remove the wrapper. I pulled and tugged and twisted and did everything I could, but I could not free the soap from that package. Didn't have a scissors handy, so it was just me and the soap. Meantime, the shower is running, waiting for me to enter, wasted water running down the drain, and I'm fighting with this bar of soap. I'm not sure what the material is they wrap it in these days. It kind of looks like paper, but it really isn't. I think it's some kind of plastic. Whatever it is, it's not going to give up that soap, and I'm getting more frustrated by the moment. What was the soap company's objective with this packaging? Are they trying to protect that soap at all cost? Well, finally, with my frustration mounting, I cast it aside and decided to make do with the small remnant soap bar that was in the shower. At this point, you're probably thinking this story is like the Shakespeare play, Much Ado About Nothing. Clearly, if this episode represents the biggest problem in my life, I should consider myself lucky. I guess the frustration results from the fact we find so many products today that come wrapped in packaging that's nearly impossible to open. There are at least a couple of types. One is the product enclosed in that clear, heavy plastic that seems almost indestructible. You can hold your purchase in your hands. You can see the product you want right there in front of you. You just can't get to it. The plastic that surrounds it is impenetrable. They will probably start to make army tanks with that stuff someday. You get your scissors and an assortment of knives, but busting through is never easy. And the problem is compounded by the fact the plastic completely encloses the product. So if you don't cut carefully, you slice into the treasure inside. The only thing worse is the package with even more frustration built in. The object inside is usually a child's toy enclosed in that same plastic, but they're also attached to heavy cardboard inside with not one, but perhaps a dozen twist ties that are apparently made of titanium or a material that's nearly impossible to cut. And of course, while you're struggling to gain access to the contents inside, you have an impatient child at your side clamoring for that exciting new toy. I'm not sure who invented any of these packaging products, including the material that imprisoned my soap. I think they were probably created in some foreign country as part of a plot to destroy us with frustration. If that's true, at least in my case, I'm afraid it's working. I'll be back in a minute. A couple of closing reminders before we go. First, if you missed the show or want to see it again, you can do that at uppermichigansource.com. Today's show will be available starting at about noon tomorrow. But our other reminder is that you don't have to miss our show because it is now available as a live stream at that same internet address. That means you can watch it live and for a couple of hours later on your cell phone, your computer, or any device, no matter where you are in the world. Check it out. Thanks to Mike Angeli for joining us this morning, and thank you for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.